And we should be up and running.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. We're tuning in live from Page Spring Cellars, the estate property here. And we are inside of Eric's personal Airstream. So we are just going to chill for a minute or two and let everyone kind of join in. And, Kim and Ruben, if you guys can give us any feedback to start, anyone already viewing, just to make sure we're good with our audio and our visual.
Yeah, what a beautiful time right now.
Yeah, it's
the lighting out here.
It's out of control, right? And
how does the screen look? Can you see past here, or is it pretty bright?
Yeah, this window being up it's a little overexposed.
Yeah.
It's a little overexposed, but it's nice. It's nice. Yeah. Closing that window might be good. And actually, if you want to open your shade behind you, we'll get. Yeah, that doesn't change it yet. Oh, Harper Johnson can hear us well.
Hey, Harper and Cindy, Zoe told me to give you a big shout out and thank you. Cindy sent a bunch of backpacking equipment to Zoe for the summer.
That's awesome.
You guys rule. They're in Colorado, outside of Colorado Springs.
Sweet. Anybody out there following us on our YouTube page? We're kind of using a new platform that should help us in a number of different ways. But if you don't mind chiming in, Harper Johnson's giving you the you bet and awesome. Chris Babin, welcome, brother. Eric, you're just out of view too, just so you know.
All right. No slacking, no slouching. Oh, that breeze is nice.
Nick, if we can get that lighting up just a touch.
A little more light.
Can our light system there go up at all? Sweet. Kim Smolinski, appreciate all that feedback. That's awesome. That's very helpful.
You might open that too. That would bring a little more light in. You mean more light, or?
Yeah, no, we're looking good.
Open that up behind you too. That'll bring more in. And then now you could do that one too, but be really careful, Nick. It likes to snap upward, so grab it really well. Grab that little white thing, and don't do that.
Let's be our last time in here, right?
As my wife would say, yes, this will be the last time you guys are here.
So you guys, thanks for tuning in with us. We're going to give you about 45 more seconds to get everything together. I would say at this point, if you don't have your white wine, which is the 2018 Familia Blanca chilled, now would be the time to go throw it in the freezer and get it as low as you can. Hopefully everyone has it down to an acceptable temperature. All right. Nick, we looking good? Sounding good?
Yeah, in case you guys can't tell, we're sitting here right on the Page Springs spring ditch with the vineyard deck and the vineyard below us. And we just thought it'd be really cool to shoot this here at the home site. And it's just a beautiful late spring day right now. You know, tons of beautiful light, flowers blooming, and a great breeze. Apparently, we might get a little bit of weather this weekend. A bit of rain, tad thunder and lightning, hopefully.
Just want to get our lighting up. Nick, if you can, is there any chance of getting that lighting up a little bit?
When you say up, you mean brighter?
Brighter,
or
yeah. I'm just getting...
I've got, check it out. I can turn on some other lights in here. Do watch this. Okay, you guys tell me. I have a whole bunch of lights with dimmers. So there's this. See that, Luke? And then watch this. That. And I have these.
All helping.
That. How about that?
All helping.
Okay, that's all the
Sweet.
lights around.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. All solar powered too. Gotta love it.
We got people asking if we can wear the Airstream out, man. Sweet.
All right. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We are tuning in live from Page Spring Cellars, the estate property here. I'm going to tell them what we're in and where we're at.
I don't know. I mean, basically, we're hiding out. Like, I shouldn't tell people.
People are already commenting about
I
knowing.
know.
They've seen it here today, and people are commenting.
Well,
So
this is my retirement plan. We're sitting inside of it. No,
this guy's my retirement plan as well. So
no, we just thought it would be really cool to shoot outside because it's so beautiful right now. And one of the great things about this trailer is that it has tons of glass, and we've actually backed it over the spring. So, I mean, literally right below us here, I can look down and see the water flowing by. You know, we just kind of wanted you guys to feel like you were here with us because I'm sure all of you guys have seen this scene at some point. So, yeah, welcome.
yeah, we're again, this is new for us, but we're excited to dive into this whole scene, and it's been a good enough thing that we're probably going to continue it into the future. So that's a discussion that's happening right now, and you know, we're not really the most techie people. We're not this whole live broadcast is brand new to us in these times, but you know, we're learning as we go, and we're looking at it as an educational kind of moment for us, and you know, it's happening. So Chris Smith back with us. Thanks, man. Glad to have you again. So welcome again, everybody, to our virtual live tasting. This is our third session. Is that right? I mean, really, it's
Fourth.
Is it our
Third?
third? Yeah, we did a kind of a
structured
test.
one, yeah.
Third, yeah,
But actually the fourth.
right. So, I mean, what's your take on these, man? How's it feel to be drinking on camera again?
I don't even know, man. It's I spent actually the last 3 days at Calibri doing something called shoot thinning, and it's a time of year where your vines have something like a foot to 2, maybe even 3 feet of growth, and every bud that you prune down to, most spurs have 2 buds on them. Okay, but every bud has 3 buds in them, and what you want are 2 shoots. So every bud should have 1 shoot, but they could have as many as 3. And if you allow them to do exactly what they want, they'll overcrop. So we literally went through every vine at Calibri, 9,000 plus vines, and snapped off all the shoots that we didn't want. And I would say we probably, as a team, Corey, Bree, Gail, Dana Dellis, and then Rachel Jackson from our tasting room were all there. We probably snapped off, I don't know, 25, 30,000 of these little, and those all had fruit, a lot of them had fruit on them. So this is just one of the steps to open up the canopy, decrease crop, and make better wines. And I just got back a couple hours ago. So, you know,
welcome back, man. Yeah. You know, I've always thought it's interesting and intriguing to me, and can't really think too much about it. But you know, these grapevines that you guys are working on and that we work on, I mean, they really could care less about producing high quality grapes for wine production. You know, I always think about that of, you know, we do all this work to promote them in the direction of producing high quality grapes for wine production. But in the meantime, they have zero intention of adjusting their approach to growing.
They just want a bird to eat their
They
berry.
basically want to produce as many seeds as possible, make it as attractive as possible for a bird to come eat that and leave some seeds elsewhere, you know, right?
You know, and I'll keep this super short. That's why, I don't know, for all of you who are really into natural wines out there, I always kind of, because I'm a grower, laugh when everybody's like, oh, I only drink natural wines. I'm like, you know, there's not really anything natural about us monocropping grapes and controlling their growth patterns and then making them into wine. And we go, oh, well, we didn't use cultured yeast, so it's natural. There's no, come on. Is there anything natural about building a house? You might say that you can align with nature, but the reality is we've kind of harnessed these vines and we manipulate them to the ends of making great wines, you know? So, yeah.
So
the vines don't care.
Without getting into it too far, have you thought about what you would think that should actually be called? Because clearly it's just more of kind of a designating term.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a matter of, I think sometimes it's a little bit of the marketing tail wagging the winemaking dog.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I think maybe there's portions of this, unless you were actually harvesting from wild grapes and then literally, I mean, every point in the way, I don't even know. I can't even come up with a point of reference for that other than maybe you just come up with a different name that has to do with your personal philosophic or pragmatic approach. But I don't think natural is the right word.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the natural fermentation is a big thing that sets it apart.
Yeah.
But we also do natural fermentations, and we are in no way trying to
and
use
maybe
the conduit of natural
and the fermentation's
wines.
maybe like 10-15% of the whole process,
Yeah.
I mean, think about a whole growing year. So anyway, let's drink some wine.
Absolutely. Again, welcome everybody. We can see that everyone's still joining in, and what we would love is any questions you guys have, just fire them off our way. We'll take them as we can. If anything's off topic, we'll try to come back to any questions as well. We're also using a new platform here that a friend of ours is advising us on, who is a lot more techie than we are, and so hopefully that'll help us to showcase our labels and a couple other things. So
has Ken jumped in yet at all?
Yeah, no, he's not with us, and actually I don't think he's going to join us. Anita is with us though.
Cool.
Ken's on another call.
Cool.
We have a friend who owns and runs Data Doctors out of the Valley, and he's kind of been our golden goose, with we're more wine people and less figuring out what adapter connects this mic to this computer here. So you guys, we are going to start with our 2018 Familia Blanca. We're going to taste through two different wines, and we are starting with the white. I'm going to throw up a little bit for you guys so you can see what we are getting into. A quick hi from Terry and Nisa, Isla, Deanna, everybody. Happy to have you guys with us. So, again, we're tuning in from our estate property here. We have the home vineyard, Dos Padres in the back. The sun's going to be setting throughout this, so we'll see how the view changes with the lighting as well. So, right off the bat, do you maybe want to just go into a quick little history of the Familias, the wines? Because we do make a signature set of two different wines. Any of you guys who don't happen to have these wines with you, happy to have you. And hopefully you can taste these wines at some point. But we make a signature set, being a red and a white. We have three of those, but we're focusing on one of them. Do you maybe want to dive into that a little bit?
Sure. How about we do it while we taste?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah.
All right.
So hope you guys can join us. Maybe we'll start with a quick little cheers.
Yeah.
Happy to be.
Yeah, and to you all as well.
Cheers to you guys.
I probably said this in one of the previous ones. We have a little ritual in our family where when you clank glasses, you always look each other in the eye. So something a little more than just clanking.
You would have to just really go deep into that can, right?
So anyway, how about first we'll sniff a little, and everybody's kind of getting into this together. And, the Familia. So again, we have the Barrios, the Familias, and Serrano. And like Luke said, red, white, brother, sister, something of the sort. This whole concept here, we made the Familia red first. And in fact, we made the Barrio red first. We made the El Serrano before the La Serrana. All in 2003, so 17 years ago now. And the basic idea of this part of our three tiers, Barrio being the neighborhood wine, this being the family wine, and the El Serrano, La Serrana being kind of our flagships, is that this is something that personifies, the idea, the vibe of getting together with family. Okay, the red wine is really rich and bold, and we'll get to that. And I would actually say this is probably one of the most outspoken white wines we make. Even though the La Serrana is a little richer, more ageable, especially when young, the Familia Blanca is effusively aromatic. It's largely based on Malvasia, and Malvasia is this, like when you smell it, you almost think it's going to be a sweet wine, but when you get it in your mouth, it's dry. And it has all these great melony, cantaloupe, gardenias, white lilies, things like that. It's a serious wine. And in fact, I would say, strangely, and I never would have suspected this, We have a library here that goes all the way back. Well, now we've been drinking some of the really old ones, but it goes back, ever since we started. The wine and the wines that have actually absolutely aged the best are our Malvasillas. So it's kind of like if we could slow down time and maybe if we had an infinite amount of space to age these things, I think I'd actually take these Malvasia based blends and I would release them like 5 to 7 years after they've sat in barrel for a while and then bottle. And, back to you asking me about the history of this started off almost pure Malvasia. This particular year, and it's changed every year. Okay, so we've had little bits of other things. There's years where the Malvasia was so strong we needed to blend other things into it to kind of mellow it out, like French Colombard or maybe a little Chardonnay or Vermentino, because it was so over the top it overwhelmed you. This year we actually put a little bit of Gewürztraminer in it. Gewürztraminer brought a whole nother thing to this. If you guys are really geeky, you might actually catch the Gewürz in there. Whereas the Malvasia is that melony white flower blossom, gardenias, white lily, the Gewürztraminer brings a little bit of this kind of Asian pear or orange kind of mandarin-y kind of thing to the background. And there's actually 1% Uni Blanc in here too.
Yep.
And if you guys don't know what Uni Blanc is one of the 2 main grapes that go into cognac. It's also called Trebbiano in Italy. The Uni Blanc came from a little vineyard in New Mexico. And we actually were purchasing it because we were going to make brandy, but we liked it so much that we ended up bottling it. So we have a pure Uni Blanc bottling as well. It largely worked in here because we use it for topping. I'd love to say something like, oh, the Uni Blanc brought this like secret little note,
right?
But in topping, when your barrels evaporate, and we had some of this in barrel, and we topped with Uni Blanc.
Gotcha.
So that makes sense? More or less.
Yeah. And maybe we can dig back into that in here in just a moment. But so if we can just kind of jump back to the nose, and I'd love for you guys to join in as much as you can. You maybe want to kind of do what you and I would do in a blending session or down in the cellar, where we actually kind of dive deep and start to really pull out our tasting notes and our assessment of this wine. I'm happy to join you, and we can just kind of tag team
Let's
it.
do it.
Meanwhile, if you guys are getting any aromatic notes, any flavors, any tastes, anything on the palate is what we say, would love to hear you guys and get your input as well. So, first off,
Beautiful.
We talked about this last time. People kind of take our wine or wine in general visually for granted, but clearly it's a big part of it. So we are typically using a white piece of paper to kind of get a standard platform to utilize for our color assessment. Right off the bat, super clean, super clear. It does look a touch greenish, like a young straw kind of color to me, showcasing a little bit of a newer vintage. So you want to just throw your nose in there and see what we're getting.
This vintage too, we picked the Malvasia came from a few different places, most notably Dos Padres. We definitely had a little bit from in this year from Arizona Stronghold's vineyard, Bonita Springs as well. But one of the neat things about it is we picked it a little earlier and we got a little more minerality out of it, which is nice.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say right off the bat, I just get a world of honeyed things. Right? I grew up in Appalachian, Virginia, and honeysuckle is just everywhere, and that is just a smell that I feel like you can't forget once you're fully immersed into that. I get a little bit of this sweet melon kind of honeydew thing as well, and I know that those aren't the most associated flavors. I would say I also get a bit of this tropical side, this like dried papaya. There's a bit of this like kind of pureed mango. Very tropical, very tropical.
And I get the tropical, and I'm also going down this kind of, you how you can kind of go down these paths. You start to get something tropical and you start paying attention to tropical. I was, as you were saying, that I was getting like this kaffir lime and going down this more citrusy green kind of path, which maybe relates to the green melon, honeydew that you were talking about. And I still always get a lot of this waxy white lily thing.
Lily.
Malvasia.
We tasted this. We got a buddy behind the scenes here. Me and Nick were tasting this wine earlier today, and lilies. I mean, right off the bat, white lilies. It's one of those things where I think if you're not in tune with a lily versus any other floral aromatics, it just comes off extremely floral without you kind of realizing it. But
lilies are intense.
They are super intense. And if you guys are ever in a florist or in a, even in the grocery store, sometimes they'll have lilies that you can go check out. And I mean, just super bright aromatics. This thing kind of jumps out of the glass. I'd say that Malvasia for me is one of the wines I feel like I can almost pick out before I even pick up my glass. Once the bottle gets open and a little oxygen is exposed and that wine splashes around in your glass, even before you pick it up, Malvasia just kind of takes over the room.
It's kind of wild too, because you don't see a lot of Malvasia out there. I would say probably Arizona in our country is doing more with Malvasia than any other state in our country. And really, the grape originated in most likely in southwestern Turkey. It's grown all over the Greek islands. I was on Santorini several years ago, and it's grown in baskets there. So if you guys get a chance when you're done with this, Google Santorini, Greece basket vines, and they grow them in these circles. And the first time I went to look at the vineyards there, I'm like, where are all the vineyards? And there's these little 18-inch tall circles where they set the spurs that grow the fruit inside the basket to protect it from the wind. And the whole vineyard is just these little circles out there. It's just wild. So the grapes grown all over Greece, parts of Italy. And of course, if you guys have ever had Madeira, it's one of the grapes that goes into the sweet and, actually really they could be drier, off dry, semi-sweet and sweet Madeiras, along with Cercial and Malmsey and a number of other grapes.
Malmsey is one of the, I feel like people who start to dig into Malmsey is kind of one of the first
it'll
landing grounds there. How about on the palate?
It's nice because it's got great acid, but it's rich at the same time. Like it has tons of mid palate.
I would say that I just immediately get this zing of acid. I have always wondered if I'm more sensitive to that than most people, but I mean, I can feel it behind my ears. I can feel it in the back of my neck. I'm getting just all this response kind of firing off from this wine, which I absolutely love. I love high acid citrus, and this wine kind of does that for me. I think that this wine has a little bit of a deception when it comes to the connection between aromatics and the palate. I feel like it comes off sweet aromatically. Sweet is a term that kind of gets misused and gets thrown around. It gets used accurately, and it confuses the people who don't understand the actual application and fermentation of it. But this wine is bone dry. There is no sugar in this wine. We ferment all the sugar out of this wine. So really what I'm getting at is it smells sweet to me. And then when you taste it, you get a lot more kind of citrus base, a lot more acid kind of flushing through, and not much of a sweetness. I mean, you get a lot of fruit without the sugary
fruit and sweetness are often that kind of, interplay.
Yeah.
Because because Luke used to do offset events for us all the time where he would go out, set up in a remote site and share our wines with people in these remote sites. And invariably somebody comes up to you and says, I want sweet wines. And you say, well, let me give you something that I have. And what you're giving them is something that's really fruity, right?
Right.
And often these are two of the wines that play that. So these are these awesome crossover wines because serious wine drinkers love these. But people who like sweet wines, we can trick them into liking dry wines because these are so fruity. Right?
Absolutely.
Which is super cool, And it's I don't know, so it's like a gateway wine into non-sweet wines, especially for Midwesterners, because Midwesterners have, for sure a love for sweeter wines. A lot of the wineries in the Midwest, if you ever go to them, make stuff that's off dry or even, intensely sweet. So This is it right here. So this is when you have your relatives from Minnesota and Ohio and upstate New York and Illinois and Kansas. This is the wine to pour for them for sure.
Yeah. I very specifically remember drinking this wine for the first time here on this property. And I moved out to Arizona from the mountains of Virginia and was not ready for the desert. I did not know what I was getting into, and I got into vineyard management and immediately recognized the intensity of the desert. And it was a wake-up call for me of whether I could handle working out in the fields and working the vines throughout Arizona summer. And I remember drinking this wine and thinking I could not think of another kind of makeup of a wine that would be more suited for the desert. It has this intensity to it that gives it this power that can stand up. But it's also just super fresh. It's light. It's refreshing. I've always thought this wine is made to drink in the Arizona heat.
Right now there's so many desert flowers blooming right now. So we were just down in Calibri, and there's a profusion of wildflowers, and people were coming up to me because they think of me as this plant guy. And they're like, "What is that smell?" And it was honeysuckle on the air constantly, which, like you were talking about earlier, this really, this wine, Malvasia especially, is just so of Arizona, And I would say, when we look back, right now, and you guys think about wine regions, you think about Rioja, Tempranillo, the Rhone, Syrah, Burgundy, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. I do think that 10, 20 years from now, when people really talk about it, when we talk about white grapes, Malvasia will still be here. And I think it's going to make its mark if it hasn't already. And the idea will be that there'll be different expressions. There'll be dry, there'll be off dry, there'll be aged expressions. If you guys ever get a chance, visit us and try to convince somebody to sell you some Malvasia from our library. Talk about honeysuckle. You start to get like waxy beeswax, honeysuckle, and almonds and marzipan-y hazelnut notes all together, and it starts to turn this kind of golden color. There's some of the, Corey Turnbull, our winemaker, is not super fond of young Malvasia, but you get one of those older Malvasias in front of him, and it's one of his favorite wines. So if you guys have a good cellar, try to lay some of your Familia Blancas down. If you have Vineyard Designate, Dos Padres, Bonita Springs, old Stronghold Malvasias that we used to make from Stronghold Vineyard, lay them down 5 to 10 years and then try them, because they're mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, what's funny is when you were saying earlier, if all these wines could wait 5 years, what I would honestly prefer is to take half of it and give it the 5 years, because I feel like aged Malvasia becomes such a different world. That waxy, aged, white, honeyed kind of world, savory, rich, nutty, absolutely. Whereas this is just vibrant, zesty.
It's pretty damn good too.
We got a couple questions coming in on this wine, and maybe we can just tag team them. Kim's asking us if we have Gewürztraminer grapes. You want to take this?
Kim Muscat?
It's not. It's Kim Smolinski.
Kim Muscat's one of the winemakers over at Stronghold.
This Kim, I feel like, it's got to be as equally of a friend of ours, because we communicate on our social a lot.
Yeah, Kim's awesome. So, no, we don't. In fact, Gewürztraminer, the Gewürztraminer in this is grown by a really close couple friends of mine, Jody Paget and Fiona Reed. They're out in Skull Valley. So when I went to Prescott College, I met Fiona years ago. Fiona is from Southern Africa and Zambia. Yeah, and she was a chef down there. And she's just, Fiona's in her 60s, and she's one of these people who just like pours light out of her. She's so vibrant and amazing. And her partner, Jody, I helped form a nonprofit in Prescott years ago to preserve creeks. Jody was our first volunteer accountant, and she's involved in more nonprofit philanthropic efforts in Prescott or in northern Arizona than just about anybody. Two of them got together, and Jody kind of backs it, has the land, and does some of the financial backing, and Fiona does all the farming. And so they have a teeny little 1 acre block of Gewürztraminer with a little bit of Treminette in it too. And Skull Valley, which is on the west side of Prescott. We also do a really, really awesome single vineyard small bottling of their pure Gewürztraminer called Painted Lady. That's the name of their vineyard, which is actually named after a butterfly called the Painted Lady. And Fiona also has butterfly gardens there all around the vineyard. So if you ever get a chance, try that Gewürz. And they still have a website, so look up their website. It's pretty amazing.
You know, I met Fiona and Jody pretty early on. And I had just moved across the country, and it was kind of a new scene for me. And they felt more like family.
Yeah, amazing.
More
people.
than 99% of the people that I met out here. And Fiona has become this. I've just gotten so close with her because she actually reminds me of my mother and my godmother, to be honest. Nice. And so I've always just had this innate love for her right off the bat. But great people doing great things over there, and I feel like we're lucky to have that connection because there's a little bit of a Gewürztraminer growing elsewhere in the state, but not very much. And they have such a unique site, and clearly we're pretty nerdy about location and representation of place, and so neither of them are with us, but Jody and Fiona, if you happen to catch this,
we got to get them in on this.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Fiona has one of the coolest things in their house that is popping into my mind. She has an ink blot that's like this big, and it's a ink blot of a footprint of an elephant. So the elephant footprint ink blot. It's so cool. I mean, very African.
Hey, real quick, Steve Vorak is asking us about the aging of this wine. He's asking whether his question is this barrel aged? If so, neutral oak or what's the deal?
So it's mixed. For me at least, there's been a lot of iterations of Familia over the years, and sometimes it's logistics. To be completely honest, stainless steel tanks are in high demand because we have temperature control. So if you're bringing a white wine in and you need to ferment it, you want to control the temperature because you want to keep it cool and you want to hold in aromatics. If it's done and you have a choice between moving a wine out of a stainless steel tank and putting it in neutral barrels, our white wines are always going to be in neutral barrels. Okay. You might move it there temporarily and then blend it back into the stainless tanks later. But in a nutshell, this year, a handful of the wines were in barrel, handful of them were in stainless, and then they all got blended in stainless and then bottled. But again, neutral. We rarely, I would say La Serrana, which is going to be our next virtual tasting. La Serrana is pretty much the only wine you ever see any oak in, maybe here and there a little bit of our Chardonnay as far as whites go. But otherwise, no malolactic, and then largely stainless, some neutral oak, then blended. And then I'd be curious. I mean, I'll throw it back at you. Do you smell oak on it? I do. As this is warming up for me, I'm getting more of a confectionery sugar, like powdered sugar and white flower blossoms and such. But for me, at least, I don't get any oak. It's all like spun sugar, like maybe even cotton candy as it warms up, but not oaky notes per se.
What about on the palate? What about that last sip and seeing what you're getting out of that?
Pure joy. No.
A Saturday 5 p.m. glass of wine, man.
God, it has such. I mean, it just has such great acidity.
Yeah.
To me, it's about balance. So this wine has tons of aromatics, right? It has a fair amount of richness. The alcohol's moderate. I mean, do you get any heat at all? Does it seem alcoholic?
I get none.
13.7, which is a little high for us.
A little higher than I would expect, actually, after getting no heat from it.
Right. Not high for the United States in general.
Yep.
But to me, this wine has the acidity, like you were saying earlier, is what makes this wine vibrant and fresh and balanced. All of those aromatics and those rich tropical notes and the fatness of it would render the wine flabby if it didn't have that great, fresh, zesty, kind of citric-y finish.
Yeah.
This wine's great.
Nick pointed out this vanilla frosting kind of note on this, and I really relate to that. And I think the cotton candy,
right,
kind of that
spun sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff Coley's saying he's drinking one of our 2013 AZ Oaks Malvasio's right now.
Dude, I want to hear how that is.
I know. We'd love to get a little feedback on that.
I'm pumped to hear that.
John Sabecki is asking, Awesome knows, did you say it was from Greece? You know, what's really, I wonder if you're Greek. I would guess.
It's from
I don't know.
It's from the island of Page Springs.
There you go. You know what's funny is I've read a lot about the homeland of this grape, and a lot of times you will kind of hear this Greece or Turkey kind of claim on this grape, and I don't know if you know the history, but behind Greece and Turkey, it's not the only thing they're arguing over, and you know, I had
way back they were actually connected.
Yeah, totally. I had a soccer coach in college who was Greek, and I remember him talking about Malvasia and how Malvasia was theirs. You know, and how Turkey would claim this grape of theirs, and you know, it's one of those things. For me, I think it's a really cool representation of kind of the motherland of these grapes that we're all working with. I mean, you know, when we say that Chardonnay comes from Burgundy, you know, I mean, it's really where it kind of became itself more from where it originally came from. I mean, if you were born in New York City and at age 2 you moved to LA, where are you going to say you're from? It's kind of one of those things.
Is pizza from New York or Chicago or Italy? You know?
The answer is New York, but no, it's a cool representation of that place for me, and for you guys at home, you know, it's a little kind of geography lesson. Is all these grapes that we're working with, we say that Malbec is Argentinian, but really Malbec is also claimed by Bordeaux, but Bordeaux is not really where that grape came from. So it's really kind of this ancient,
or at least where it gained notoriety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, it's this kind of ancient Persia where all these grapes kind of came from historically from the ground up. And so that is kind of the Caspian Sea area, Georgia, Turkey, Iran, Greece,
Fertile Crescent.
The Fertile Crescent, exactly. So I've always thought of Malvasia as a really cool link to kind of the mainland, the homeland of grapes in general, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. You know, a huge resource for those of you who really want to dig into this. You know, so I worked as an ecologist prior to get into winemaking, and the reality is, in the last decade or two, the whole taxonomic world of all plants has been completely flipped over because of genetic research. Okay, so Jancis Robinson, one of the great wine minds and scholars of our time, published a book called Wine Grapes, and it's like this, and it's probably the book that I spend most time with, because she has all the most recent genetic research in there, and things that people have said for years. This is where this grape came from, and this is the way it is. She'll either support that, or I would say at least half the time she's saying, sorry, genetic research is saying something completely different. So if you guys can afford that book, it's a couple $100. It's interesting because there's even a couple great varieties that she talks about in there relative to Page Spring Cellars, Cabernet Pfeffer being one of them. But it's so great because she talks about, here's the origins, here's the stories, the history, here's the genetic background, here's where it's grown, and here are the characteristics of that grape and where people make wine from it. So it's kind of supporting all aspects of what you're talking about. Just because a grape came from somewhere doesn't mean it's as important, for instance, as the country that took it to the next level, like Malbec in Argentina.
Absolutely.
Right? Or Malvasia in Arizona. So anyway.
You know, I for those of you who don't know me, I do all of our marketing and all of our kind of PR stuff, and I kind of talk about this place for a living, and I end up kind of representing Arizona as a wine region, and then more so the Verde Valley. But you know, I would say that Malvasia is one of the more indicative grapes to our uniqueness as a region. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I mean, there's some viticultural things about Malvasia that are worth noting too. Malvasia does really well. So because we grow at higher elevations, as you guys know, Arizona viticulture is all about elevation. You get too low, it's too hot. You get too high, it gets too cold. So there's this band that we grow in. And because we're growing in places where we're trying to get cooler, we run the risk of spring frost and even fall frost. We just actually are dealing with some fall frost issues from last year. Anyway, one of the cool things about Malvasia is in the white world, it comes out a little bit later, but it also puts out a really good second crop if it gets frosted. So it's kind of one of these things that just really kind of makes sense, So anyway, should we be digging into our red too, man? I know you poured all over glass. I gotta start pouring some red too.
One of the things that I personally just attached to on this wine, and it's a very just personal preference kind of thing, is the acidic level or the force or the fuel behind the Familia Blanca here. It's just crisp, it's clean, it gives me this refreshing sensation, and I just absolutely love that. And we actually have the tech sheets on here. The pH on this wine is 3.3. Do we have other wines that are getting higher than 3.3 in acid?
Oh, I mean, all of our reds, maybe except for Barbera, are 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8. Our whites will push up to 3.5, 3.6, 3.3. What'd you say it was? 3.3, 3.2?
It's 3.33. I
3.33 is that's a winemaker's wet dream in a lot of ways. It generally means the TA is going to be proportionally higher and give it this freshness.
Yep.
Wines are incredibly stable at lower pHs. Even the natural sulfites that are produced by yeast preserve this wine really well. It's almost exponentially more stable and ageable at lower pHs than higher pHs. Because, without seeming too geeky, pH is a logarithmic scale. So when you go from 3.1 to 3.2, that tenth of a difference is actually 10 times different. It's not a one step. 3.1 to 3.2 is a 10 times step. So the amount of acidity and hydrogen ions, that is what the measurement of pH is infinitely higher. So the lower you get, the more acidic the wine gets on a much faster scale.
Right. So then the 100th decimal point plays a huge role. Is basically what you're saying.
And that's why this wine's so fresh. That's why it's so ageable too.
Delicious.
Acid's a preservative.
Delicious. Hey, I'm going to try to pull up a label. It'll block us out from you guys watching us, but I just know that there's a lot of history behind the artwork behind the label. I've always been a little bit jealous about the label. I do the graphic design around here and a lot of the kind of creative direction, and clearly our label has become an iconic building block to our brand. And I will personally say that when I first started working here, I actually did not like our label. I did not relate to it, and I had trouble finding the branding drive behind it.
And I stuck to my guns.
And this guy told me to shut up and go back to work. But no, as I've gotten more into wine, I mean, there is something about our label that stands out on a shelf, and I think where my head was at originally was
black and
we
white,
need something
bland,
we need something bright and something that really jumps out. And what I've realized is that's really what most every other label is on the shelf. And when you see Page Springs on the shelf, I mean, the next time you guys see it in an AJ's or a Bevmo or a Total Wines or a Whole Foods, just take a peek around and look
distinctive.
It's distinctive. The black and white really stands out. So let me see if I can grab this guy. And
while you're doing that, so you guys all have a bottle in front of you.
So I do have it up.
Yeah. So I mean, if you take a look at this, so number one, I should give credit where credit's due. These were developed by my sister-in-law, Zuzana Ponca. Zuz from Slovakia, and her brother and my brother and her live in Charlottesville, Virginia. My brother has a distillery. Zu is a landscape architect, really talented artist. All of these label concepts were developed between the two of us back in the day. She does these pen and inks, and I would give her these ideas, and I'd say, look, I want my family on here. In fact, if you're in our tasting room lounge, you look up in the ceiling, this label is there. And obviously this was done a long time ago, because if you look way over on the left, you can see me on the left bank. You can see my wife, Gail, sitting on the blanket. Our youngest still in the kind of the crib down here. And then the two older boys playing swords up here. And then our second to youngest daughter on the stream bank. So all 4 of our kids are on here. I mean, this is truly our family scene. And I'll give you all a little hint. Every label, if you look at it really, really closely, you'd have to blow it up high res. There's little secret messages in there. Like there's been ones with like there's a tree and there's a heart on it where it says Eric and Gail or something like that. But all of these have really deep meaning with our family too. And this is my family right here. You know, it's pretty cool.
You know, what's funny is I remember the first year I worked here, which was 2011, asking you about some secret little things I saw on the label, and you saying, "Hey, no one ever catches that." But now we're kind of leaking that. There's
you gotta find them. It's like a Willy Wonka kind of thing, you know. So anyway, it's all the kids are on here, all 3 boys and 1 girl: Josh, Joseph, Jacob, and Zoe, and then me and Gail.
Hey, so before we move on, Ruben O has got a question for us. It's
Ruben.
It's not a, I don't know if I've actually met Ruben before or not, but he definitely supports us. I've seen him all over our social. So I'd love to get your take on this. His question is: do winemakers look up PDFs of their favorite wine and try to doctor their wine to be sort of a copy of their favorite? Before you get into that, if you haven't seen Sour Grapes on Netflix, check it out. It is essentially an amazing movie that kind of gets into that whole question. But what's your take? Have you ever? I mean,
no, that's an easy one. And I actually have a quick story that relates to that. I would say no, from a conscious, programmatic, strategic perspective. Clearly, the wines that you drink that you love influence your pursuit of greatness or your art, right?
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example of 2 extremes, really quick. When I was at David Bruce in the Santa Cruz Mountains, David was this iconic, old school guy who was right after Martin Ray. I mean, David Bruce. If you guys know anything about Paul Masson and Martin Ray, if you get a chance, look up a book called Vineyards in the Sky. Martin Ray was the first guy to ever put the 2 words Pinot and Noir on a label in our country. Okay, and he was in the Santa Cruz Mountains. That's why I went to the Santa Cruz Mountains to learn how to make Pinot. David Bruce was the next generation after him. David had a really good friend named Leo McCloskey, and look up an article online called "The Grapes of Math." Okay,
great name.
The Grapes of Math. Leo and some of his chemistry cohorts basically went out and they chemically modeled 100-point wines from the Spectator, Robert Parker, etc. And he started a consulting business, and he went out there and said, "Hey guys, I can help you make a 100-point wine." And in our industry, if you get 100 points on a wine, you never have to worry about finances again, ever. Okay. And so, lo and behold, because Leo and David were really good friends, Leo and some of his friends started consulting for us when I was at David Bruce. I was a junior kind of winemaker then, and they came in and did all this analysis of our grapes in the field, and they gave us input on how to farm, and then they gave us input on how to manipulate and change our winemaking techniques in the winery, and then we would taste some blind, and in the end, guess what happened? There was this huge uprising and argument between our winemaking team and our consultant, because ultimately we were like, we don't really give a shit whether this wine gets 100 or not, because we felt like we were fighting what the wines were telling us. These wines were like, here's what I want to be, and here's what we loved and what we saw in these grapes and these wines. And yes, we could have made a lot more money by doing this, but I felt really proud to be part of a team that was like, no, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be true to that. And so I know this is a little roundabout, but our basic philosophy is we pay attention to the vineyards and what the grapes come in like. And those are what inform you about what the wines are going to be like. And there's no doubt that you fit into that equation and you can steward it in different directions. I like red fruit wines for sure. I like higher acidity. I like spiciness. But man, when you just taste a grape or a wine that is like, oh, that's so of this place. If you try to make it something else, I feel like you're doing the universe a disservice. So hopefully that answered that question.
No, I think I mean I'm an artist and I do graphic art, and it's such a interesting topic because you have to find your inspiration somewhere. Whether it's a natural source or someone else does something that inspires you, or it's a connection to something. I mean, there's a million outlets of inspiration out there. And, it's funny when you see something that really inspires your art, and then you go and I mean, for me, I will go and draw and paint and it's one of those sensitive worlds and a lot of fine lines of where you can go with that. And, it's really where your heart's at.
You got to be true to yourself. You got to be true.
And where that comes from and how that resonates with you. And if something is trying to be like something else, it's whether you enjoy that connection or you dislike that connection is really, I feel like, what's going to separate whether that translates into success for you individually or not.
Right. I mean, I get inspired by other wines for sure. But I'm very wary of externally referencing myself or what we do. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, ultimately, isn't one of our goals as human beings to self-reference? The idea is, who am I and what am I doing and what's my unique take on all of this, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want our wines to be, as a team. I mean, obviously not just me.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty huge. Like, again, I was just out of Calibri for a number of days. Every time, that's why I think winemakers need to spend time in the field, because I think the field is what grounds you and kind of tells you, oh, there's already something there. You don't need to impose your ego or any strong artistic bent on it. You need to the real courage comes in getting out of the way and letting these things happen, let that flow happen. What is Calibri? Is my job to say, I'm Eric Golomsky, I made Calibri this way, or is it like I'm a conduit?
Yeah.
Twice now that I didn't spill that. No, but seriously, what is an artist? You're an artist. You're a conduit, right? The more you can allow these things to express themselves through you, the better job you're doing. So taste some wine, man. Come on, let's do
it. I'm game.
So, by the way, you guys, you might have noticed that a while ago, I opened the red. I do think that the Familia is something that could use a lot of air. It is young. It's one of our best sellers. So invariably, we're maybe selling it to people a little younger than I would like to see happen.
Yep.
Having said that, back to some of our previous sessions, air and open time and some swirling really benefit a lot. So I know I might be jumping ahead here, man. But
you're thirsty, man. Ruben, great question, man. He loves the answer, and it's a wine is this amazing conglomerate of science and art, I feel like, and it's hard to look outside of those two things completely intertwined. I mean, you can't separate the art from the science, and you can't separate the science from the art. And
Agreed,
it's
Agreed.
You got to take it for what it is. And I feel like if you drink a wine and it reminds you of the best wine you've ever had, that's probably a great connection to make. But if you drink a wine and it reminds you of a place that you loved, but it's selling you short on that experience, then that's that personal connection. And I think you should just kind of trust in that.
I mean, wines are like movies. Some movies move your soul. Some movies get you thinking. Some scare the shit out of you. Others, I mean, it's the beauty of different wines. Some you just don't like. Some you love. It's just like any other art form.
Okay, so before we dive into our red here, a quick shout out to Dan King. Happy to have you with us. Anyone who is driven onto our property, one of the first things you will notice, I would say, is the view of Dos Padres, where this wine is coming from that we were just drinking. And I would say the second thing you're probably going to notice is our solar structure that's right out front. Harmon Solar, who Dan King's with, is a huge part of this. We are extremely excited to be 100% solar powered as a business at this point. That includes our offsite vineyard as well.
Yeah,
and
Calibri's all solar as well.
Yeah, we've been, in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, we've just been really wrapping our grip around the sustainability side, the kind of green eco approach to business. And it's been pretty interesting for me. I was raised by hippies. I feel like you were as well.
Dad's
man.
a musician.
Yeah,
my dad's
still on tour. I'm well versed in nutritional yeast and polenta.
Your dad's name is Jerry.
My mom's Geraldine. So, I just, I don't know. It's your.
We're really proud to be making great wines, and each year we take another step to decrease our footprint.
Our footprint completely. And we, at this point, are solar powered. We're net zero water usage with using our spring and reclaiming our own water here. We are decreasing our carbon footprint in every way possible, from solid waste to no tilling in our soils for carbon release. We are using solar powered. I mean, we've used solar-powered speakers to produce predatory bird calls. So there's little solar speaker systems. There's just so many different outlets within this place that I just personally connect to hugely when it comes to the sustainability and eco efforts here. And
although COVID has ruined us, because the to-go window is kicking my ass. Like, you guys, you've probably seen it everywhere. The number of to-go boxes on this planet right now has multiplied. It's exponentially. So, I mean, I guess we don't really have any control over that right now. It's kind of a bummer, but I've been feeling more. I mean, I've been putting more in our dumpster. We were literally on the cusp of trying to figure out how to reduce solid waste here. And now, because of the to-go window world, we have 5-10 times more. But hopefully, we are going to open up Monday at Partial Steam. Our governor, for those of you who are not in our state, is lifting our, we're going to the first phases of lifting the quarantine, and we're going to be at Partial Steam here in our tasting room, which I'm excited about for a variety of reasons, if not only to not be generating so much waste, because every person who comes here has to have a box and a ton of cardboard and plastic to be able to go eat somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it could not connect me more to this place and this business is this whole green effort. So Dan King, thanks for being involved, man. Quick shout out to Aaliyah Woolsey. Happy to have you joining us as well. So what do you think? Should we jump into the second wine?
I'm like halfway through mine already, man. All right, you guys. So this was the Familia Rojo. We're starting to call it Familia Rojo just to kind of further.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring up the label so everyone can see it. And if you don't mind, just giving maybe a 30-second just intro to our 2018 Vino de la Familia.
Okay, so Familia in 2003, one of the first wines I ever made was a Familia Rojo, and it was Petit Syrah base with a wee bit of white wine. It was Viognier that year. So the basic template, as you might call it, was Côte Rôtie. Okay, so Côte Rôtie, of course, northern extremes of the Rhone Valley, pushing up towards Lyon, where you start to see Gamay grown really in kind of southern Burgundy. They grow Syrah and Viognier, and they have to be picked together, field blended, and fermented together. And the basic idea there is that you've got this big brawny Syrah, and this little bit of Viognier brings this elegance, and it imparts softness. It tempers the tannins. It drops little hints of stone fruit in the background. So it's this kind of whisper of elegance against the otherwise really intense dark, phenolic, brawny Syrah. So when I first made Familia back in 2003, I had that in my mind. I had just been in France, and I was really digging on Côte Rôties, and this was a little before they got really expensive. They're almost unattainably expensive now, which is a bummer. But anyway, I used Viognier back in the day. Since then, we've also evolved this blend, and we've used Malvasia. We've used little hints of Gewürztraminer, and a variety of other white grapes. It's not so much that it has to be Viognier. It's more that the white wine needs to soften the tannins, and it needs to bring stone fruit to the background. And in this particular year, interestingly, a lot of years, Petit Syrah has dominated as the red grape. We have a little more Syrah this year, and that largely comes from Dos Padres. The Syrahs from Dos Padres right across the river here are just brawny. They're big, dark, fat, rich, So Syrah, Petit Syrah, we have a little bit of Teroldego in this. If you guys don't know Teroldego, it's kind of the Petit Syrah of northern Italy. It maybe brings a hint more of this green herbal quality to the wine. And then last but not least, Malvasia. The Malvasia came from Dos Padres. It's what, if you had tasted this wine without Malvasia, which I wish people could be in our blending sessions, we get the red base built, and then we add 1, 2, actually maybe even 0.5%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% Malvasia or white grape to it. That one, something like 0.5% can change the wine so radically, both in its structure and softness of tannins and the perception of fruit. So anyway, digging into this right now. When you put it under your nose, there's just tons of these dark red, purpley, rich, ripe fruits going on. And I wish you could try it without the white wine in it. Right now, and I don't know if you guys get that light, spicy kind of herbal quality on the back of the nose. That's a lot of that Teroldego coming into play. That's from House Mountain Vineyard, by the way. And Teroldego is grown way up north in Italy, kind of northeastern Italy, Trentino, Alto Adige, kind of white wine country, honestly.
Right off the bat, I just get this kind of reduced red fruit. It's almost a raisiny, rich,
like compote.
Ripe compote. Compote is a great word for it. It has this amazing underlying raspberry that I feel like is just jumping out from behind all these dark red and black fruits.
This is another great example. I was digging on the nose, but I put it in my mouth and I like to go back and forth. This wine also has awesome acidity. It finishes so fresh.
So before we get into our tasting notes, a gentleman named Terry Glomsky is asking, is this the first Teroldego addition into the Vino della Familia?
To be completely honest, I don't know for sure, but what I'll say is I'm relatively certain that this is. We've had a little bit of Zinfandel in the past to bring kind of a jammy fruitiness to it. It's always had Petit Syrah. That's always been the baseline. There's been fair amounts of Syrah. It's been a little bit of Zin. I think this, it's too bad Corey Turnbull's not here because Corey's like really good with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm 99% sure this is the first year we've used Teroldego.
Yeah.
And the way this happens, picture a table twice the size of this, loaded with glasses, okay? And we're tasting through the components. And usually what we do is we taste through components and we pull off the vineyard designates. We go, this is like the perfect Teroldego. This is the perfect Syrah. This is the perfect Petit Syrah. Those get shunted off. Meanwhile, as we're tasting, we're going, that really speaks of Familia. So I remember blending this wine and thinking that we needed something to come to the table that wasn't just fruit. And it's too easy when you're working with Syrah and Petit Syrah, especially when you put a little Malvasia in there, to have this jammy, fruity wine. And our house style is, we eschew, like we avoid jammy fruitiness. The Teroldego has this, I would say, as a winemaker, we call it phenolic. Phenolic is this tobacco, resinous, things that are kind of a little more umami and savory. Phenols make me think of, soy and bong resin and, stuff like that. And the Traldigo basically took this wine from being something kind of sophomoric and fruity to something that's way more serious and has this greater depth of character. And I'm pretty damn sure, to make a long story short, that this is the first year we've done that.
Cool. Yeah, it's the little side note on that is some of you may know this about us, but something that kind of separates Page Springs cellars from a number of wineries is the amount of labels that we produce. We kind of have this prideful drive behind us to continually ask winemakers we meet, producers that we meet, about how many labels they are producing. You'll hear a range of number or amount of labels that we produce each year because it changes every year. But I would say on average, we are 60 to
50, 60, sometimes even 70.
Yeah. I know we've gotten up towards 70 before. And so if you think you have trouble remembering what's in these wines,
thank you.
Welcome us to your boat of us trying to keep up with all these as well.
It's also a statement about, it's this love affair with wines that happen in the cellar. If you have a bunch of neat little batches and you taste it and you're like, oh my God, this is so good, the last thing you want to do is blend it away. So that's kind of where this came from too. We're willing to make the extra effort to bring to you guys all these different expressions, and it's hugely educational too. Like, for instance, I would highly encourage you to go try our straight Traldigo now after we kind of gave that a little spotlight.
Yeah.
It's just, when we get to the rosés, we start talking about Kumlas, another grape that is just shining in Arizona,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Joe Villegas is giving you a little crap on your bong resin reference there. You heard him.
What, because he knew what bong resin was?
Or because we all do. No, we don't shy away. When we connect. When we are doing these tastings, you'll hear us dive into childhood memories that have zero reference to other people, and that's what you connect to. And I would say that, one of the family, the idea of these wines being this crowd-friendly, kind of food-friendly, big, open feast scene application. It makes more sense with these wines to have kind of memory connections with them, I feel like, compared to actual taste or sensory connections with them.
We're doing our job, making sure we talk about these wines and everything, but you guys all know, almost every one of you right now is sitting with somebody, and you have family that you get together with every now and then and drink wine. What is wine? It's about how it brings us together.
Yeah.
It loosens us up. It brings, it's this congenial, jovial aspect of it. It breaks down the ego a little bit. And that's, breaking down the ego is a great thing, makes you happy.
We go at each other all the time, don't we? No, joking. Hey, quick little answer, and I'm going to bring it up. We have a friend of ours asking who is fishing on this label. If I actually don't know the answer to this, so I'm kind of intrigued to hear. If I had any guess, it would be the gentleman that I fish with a lot over here. But here, let me find that label and bring it back up.
No, it actually shows one of the kids. So some of this is stylized. I would actually say that none of my kids are hardcore fishermen compared to me or Luke. And, because
one of them is about to become, we're about to bring him on
to indoctrinate
on
him
a serious
on the
trip.
Salt River.
Yeah.
That is actually our youngest Joe, who happens to have the fishing pole, but he's not necessarily the fisherman. And it's funny right now thinking about this. We do this. One of my mentors, a guy named Dick Landis. If you guys have ever heard the apple wine story, Dick just turned 89, and Dick and I for years, and now Luke and a good friend of ours, Biff, go down to this crazy spot in the Salt River. And we go catfishing everywhere.
Upper Salt.
What did I say?
Oh, maybe I missed you, but Upper Salt is just a different world than the Salt River that everyone knows of.
Oh, good point. Yeah. I mean, this is literally, we go off-road. I mean, we drive my truck, which has been destroyed on this trip, off-road, no roads. And we park in the spot, and we go down and fish, and we harvest these beautiful catfish from the Salt River, saltwater environment. And this catfish tastes like lobster. I'm from New England. And there's bighorn sheep and the most phenomenal geology on the planet. And it's my stepdad Rod's been down there with us, and we're gonna bring Joseph, the one with the fishing rod, in here down there this year.
I don't see him tuned in, but we should maybe bring a bottle of this down and drink it with him.
Yeah,
hey,
it's epic.
Side little note: we're talking about this fishing trip that we do every year, and I was just thinking earlier about topics that we could actually discuss on this broadcast, and I was just thinking about questions of, that would interest you guys at home, and thinking about some of your top kind of just wine experiences. And what ended up happening was it was digging into my head about my top wine experiences, and I would say that arguably one of the best wine experiences that I've ever had in my entire life was we were heading out to this catfishing trip.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
And I had never had a vintage Chateau Margaux before, and we I believe it was 05 or 06, which may be a touch young for people.
05,
05, yeah. And we opened this 05 Margaux on the edge of this cliff, zero any type of connecting signal of any form, and we started drinking this. What did you say? 06?
No, 05 Margaux. And
05.
Dick made beef bourguignon.
Right? And we were making dinner, and we were just in love with this wine, and watching this storm build off on the horizon that was just kind of building towards us. And I don't know how well or how intoxicated you were,
came right at us.
We basically were drinking one of the best wines, one of the best labels on the planet, and just watched this storm come and fully engulf us. We ended up crawling into your truck and not turning it on, and it got pitch black on us.
The truck was like,
and the wind, the rain, and he has a large truck, and it was shaking. Me, Eric, and our friend Dick Landis were in the dark in this truck drinking an 05 Margaux, eating beef bourguignon, getting shook by the storm.
And then it passed like half an hour later.
And then it passed, and we
perfectly clean,
climbed out, and
oh my God,
passed out, and
it was beautiful.
Smiled away.
Yeah. It was so beautiful.
So sorry to go there with that, but it's kind of where my head went earlier, thinking about these things. And
what great wine does,
yeah, absolutely. All right, we ready to jump into this Familia? So, again, cheers to you guys. We are now tasting our 2018 Vino della Familia, which to me is, well, I actually hesitate in saying this, but and my hesitation is based around our approach and our actually trademarked motto of trust your palate. But this is the most popular wine that we make. I mean, would you agree with that statement?
I would.
I don't think that there's any wine that I hear more people talking about their appreciation for, their knowledge of, their recognition of this label, and all of that to me just has a foundation that supports.
We're doing
all
something
those
right.
statements.
Yeah.
Clearly, we're doing something right. The 2018 vintage is actually our 15th anniversary of this wine. It's not the 15th anniversary of this place, being that the 2018 vintage is what we're drinking here. But I've been working here for close to 10 years, and this is 15 years in, man. You got that off to a good start there, and we're in a pretty damn good spot now. So you mind before you get into that palate, and again, we would love any input from you guys here. What are you getting there?
So much of there's so many things going on whenever you taste a wine. I'm kind of riffing off of the Trollio still. Like, there's all these really obvious fruits. It's really plentiful, but if I'm still getting that great herbal kind of leafy herbs de Provence quality off that Trollio. And this red raspberry, black cherry, and this has some nice oak on it too. So if anybody wanted to talk oak, this is a wine where we feel like it can handle a little more oak. When you put it under your nose, you'll get this little sweet, caramely, butterscotchy, there's a candy note in there. That's definitely the oak coming through too. On the browner side, like nutty, woody thing,
Yeah, I definitely get this. Well, I feel like I'm jumping right past the obvious. It's so much red fruit. It's got this black cherry, blackberry, raspberry. Just that is obviously kind of the stock of this one here.
Okay, caramel cone, I think.
Once I think what happens with us is we're really familiar with this wine, and we kind of jump past the obvious of what we sell. Yeah. So me and Eric here are both kind of digging deep. What I actually get big time is this kind of browned butter.
That's the caramel cone I'm talking about. I can totally get that. Yeah. God, I hope you guys are eating some food right now, because I'm like, we're getting really hungry. There's this really sweet kind of browner side to this, alongside the fruits, that is, that whole world of savory, umami, sweet dessert kind of things, graham cracker crust and caramel cone and all that.
Graham cracker is there for sure. Being a non-native to Arizona, I'm continually kind of building my argument of representing Arizona since I've been here. And I would say that graham cracker is one of the more unique traits that I find in Arizona wines that I don't find in a lot of others. And I'm absolutely getting it on this.
Now that we said that, that's funny. You get it in your head and you're like, oh yeah, graham cracker. There was a magazine when I was at David Bruce called Wine X. It's no longer around, and it was a serious magazine, and it was like the Spectator or the Enthusiast. All of the reviews were only metaphorical. There was nothing literal whatsoever. Yes. So it was always like, the first time I sat around a campfire and made s'mores, and the first time it rained in a parking lot, and it was all like that. Now, obviously, the idea of the publication was to kind of eschew this very literal wine culture that we live in. Yes. And it was awesome. I used to love reading it, but unfortunately it didn't take. And the magazine's not around anymore. But these guys used to come and visit us at David Bruce. And so I guess I'm just saying I would encourage people to relate. And it doesn't have to be cherries, graham crackers, oak, marzipan, herbs. It could be, this reminds me of the last time I was in the redwoods outside of Santa Cruz, or I was in this maple forest in Vermont or whatever, because right now I'm like, there's a little bit of maple on there.
For me personally, when we do our tastings within the cellar, kind of right off the bat, we dig into the literal application of our senses there. But I would say personally, for me, my deeper connections to wine are all very personal experiences for me. Oak on wine for me reminds me so much of my father's table saw. And have you guys ever smelled that? No, you haven't. It's just so. Yeah. I mean, you can relate and you can get it, but I have cedar. When you guys think cedar, I think of installing cedar paneling into closets when I was 15 years old. And so. Back to the trust your palate thing, I think that your personal experiences and your personal connections to these wines are what should really fuel you into your appreciation for these wines. But then there's obviously also something pretty special about saying, "Hey, do you smell this?" And then
everybody smells
the graham
that,
cracker thing that we just kind of did there is a great example of it. And,
well, the other thing I want to encourage out there, and I was just thinking of my father and his partner Nisa. We also have a responsibility to help this thing evolve. There has been a pretty staid perception of what constitutes wine knowledge for a long time, and I respect that. And personal wine knowledge, personal references, the ability to respect the idea that everybody has a different experience, i.e., trust your palate, is really important to honor. And so the question is, what is the next horizon for us as far as our culture's relationship with wine? What does it mean? Is it analytical and reductionist?
Yep.
And is our job to pull this apart into its components, or is it to appreciate it as a whole, or everything in between? And I would say that formal wine education in our world tends to be reductionist, and I think that's appropriate. We clearly need those tools to do what we do. I need to recognize if there's a bad flaw that's going to overwhelm this wine and know how to deal with it.
Yep.
On the other hand, you know what you call a flaw, we debate this about beers, sour beers and all these funky beers out there, Brettanomyces beers, lactobacillus beers. They're all over the place now. And things that people used to call flaws in wines or beers are now what people love.
Yeah.
So to me, that's hugely educational because it's redefining what is okay and what's acceptable. Is what is acceptable just what has been acceptable for a long time? This is what we think is good. Like modern art comes along. What does that mean? It's the same thing with wine. There's this evolution occurring, and our job is to kind of push that. I'm not saying we should perpetuate crap, but we should also keep an open mind about how do we flex this thing and accept more and take more into the fold of what is interesting and complex and connects us with the earth and our lives.
I feel like that is so far beyond wine in general.
I know we're digging into philosophy.
I couldn't relate more. When you start to go there, and if you keep going, that's where you go with that, right?
It's your job to keep me from going too far.
So, how about taste? And again, we would love to hear what you guys are hearing out there. Harper's just saying perfect, but to each their own is the real big point we're trying to make here. So, how about your feels on beyond the aromatics once you start to get into this wine here?
I think the beauty of this wine is that that richness of fruit and intensity of character on the nose does not come across as fat and heavy on the palate. That's our house style, you guys. Rarely, although we do it, will you have a wine from us that, like right now, this acidity is washing down the back of my tongue. Rarely will you have a wine that leaves you feeling like you just had a Starbucks shake or something that's incredibly sweet. To me, acidity is the mantra and the core of what we do. Acidity is also what makes this wine go with food.
Yeah.
It's what makes the wine remain fresh so that you don't feel heavy afterward. Again, back to alcohol, 13.4. This is actually lower alcohol than the white, So I just think this wine's incredibly vibrant and fresh, despite the fact that it has really dark fruit characters, which I think is really fucking cool,
So we'll bleep that out. No, wait, we're live. Sorry. Yeah, we do cuss, right? So you want to go into actual tasting notes on this wine? Maybe spend the next minute or so just digging on that.
So I don't know if for anybody else this wine has changed. It's changed a lot for me since I've started tasting it. But I'll highlight again on the palate. I'm getting great acidity, and that acidity connects with the fruit characters. It's a tart plum. It's a tart black cherry. It's a what is that fine? I mean, I'm reticent to talk about citrusy characters, but like this overripe orange, rind kind of thing going on. I know you love the orange world, man. This wine, and it's really complex.
Yeah.
I could probably sit here for another hour, which we don't have, and this wine would probably present another dozen things to me.
Yeah.
And you guys, one of the things I love to do, if I haven't already done this, is I put my hand over the glass, I shake it, okay, and then I lick my hand. It's the funnest part, and then get your nose in there right away.
You wash your hands first.
Yeah, if you do it with a rubber glove, it's fine. But anyway, get your nose in there right after doing that. You're going to notice like 10 other things that you didn't notice before. Reset on your arm, smell yourself, and then go back in. That'll heighten your senses. I mean, all kinds of things.
Carolyn hates pointing out this black currant. I was thinking
nice.
this black currant, huge right off the bat. I mean, it has this. I mean, I'm getting a apple peel,
like Red Delicious apple peel,
cola.
Little hint of Tootsie Roll.
I think Tootsie Roll is pretty spot on.
Brings me back to my trick-or-treating days.
A little bit of that cocoa kind of world getting in there.
I was definitely one of those kids who did not make it home with the candy.
So, we're getting into our time here, but I would say one of the more unique things that stands out to me about this wine here is it's bold, it's big, it's rich, it's ripe. But you'll hear the term body used with wine a lot. And the more you read about body, you realize it's based around a lot of texture and viscosity. And I feel like body is probably not the right term for this word if you're really getting nerdy about how you speak about wine.
This wine has a swimmer's body.
There you go.
It's cut,
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
I mean, it's really, it's cut and it's well defined, but it's not like, on steroids. And it's really well defined in a beautiful, elegant way.
I brought up a comment here from Kimberly Andy saying blood orange. These guys actually give me a lot of crap for how I always go into the citrus world, and I have a really strong love for the world of oranges, basically, and limes, and I don't connect with lemons as much, but with wine, I feel like I'm always finding these citrus worlds, and blood orange is something I was thinking earlier, and I was actually hesitant to say it because he was kind of putting me on blast with that. But
I said orangey stuff. Come on. Oh man.
Lacey Brown likes your the air blast trick.
Yeah, right on. You got to try it. If you guys didn't try it, I would highly recommend it. I do that during tasting when we're blending all the time. Seriously, we have smaller glasses when we're blending, and I shake the shit out of it, and then get my nose in there right away. And I almost always smell my arm right beforehand, and then it's like turning the volume up on my sense of smell, like 5-10-fold. It's awesome.
Yeah, I like that. Something that stands out to me about this wine is it's big, it's bold, but it's super silky, it's super smooth. Do you maybe want to talk about the breakdown of what's in this? For any of you guys who don't have this wine at home, what we are drinking is a blend that's mostly Syrah and Petite Syrah, but there is a little bit of Teral to go in there, and there's a little bit of Malvasia Bianca, which made up the majority of the white label that we were drinking there. So I would think that the popularity behind this wine has something to do with its richness connected with its smoothness. And do you maybe want to touch on that? And
there's a lot of the wines that get 100 points or are viewed as super ageable aren't necessarily wines, and I've had a lot of those. Are not necessarily wines that your average person is going to drink and go, oh, this is awesome. It's like, oh, maybe this will be awesome in 20 years, but who's really going to do that? So I think the idea that I mean, in the end, the idea of trust your palate is you guys make a decision. We can tell you whatever we want. Robert Parker, the wine enthusiast, wine spectator can tell you whatever they think. If you like the wine, that's all that matters. And what I'll say is year in, year out, we've made this wine when people like it, and we learn from that. So we adjust. Whenever we blend, we taste the previous vintage and we go, yeah, I mean, you've been there. Okay, we think this is it. Let's go taste last year's or the years before and go, are we in line here? And I think back to what you said, what is it about this wine that appeals to people? I think it's an awesome translation of the red grape. To me, when you look at a red grape and you taste this wine, there's a connectivity, and I think grapes are a really amazing fruit. I think it's not going to leave you going, oh, this is really too dry and tannic.
Yep.
I don't think you're going to go, this is too acidic. I just think that the wine is just all around something like, think about a food that everybody loves. I mean, for me, I'm going to go to potato chips immediately, right? Come on.
We've eaten so
Come on. Who doesn't love a potato chip? Whether you want to or not. I mean, I just think this wine has a little bit of everything that people love, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. It's one of these wines that I think is a touch more direct. I would not say that it is the most complex of our wines that we make here, but that is part of the love that I find for this wine, is that it kind of presents itself for what it is. Right. And once you connect with this wine, it's I mean, you can keep digging deeper on your connection with it, but it's one of those things that it gives itself to you, and I think that's why a lot of people connect with that as well. So
it's of us,
Yeah, absolutely. What about the future of the Familias? Any idea behind that? I know that the Familias were really fueled by California fruit when we first started, and we kind of planted grapes specifically to covet the success of this wine of all forms. But
the thing that most people don't think about is there's a huge amount of planning and long-term planning that goes into these. For instance, 8 years ago we planted Petite Syrah at House Mountain Vineyard because we wanted it for this wine. And so this wine, the Petite Syrah, is all House Mountain now. So, you think about your day-to-day life. Oh, I'm a list maker and I plan out my week or my month, or maybe we might put together a budget for the year. As a winemaker in our vineyards, we literally think, okay, 5 to 10 years from now, how are we going to make this wine? I want to stop buying these grapes from someone else because I want to grow them myself, because I know I can do a job that is more true to who we are. I'm not trying to say this guy doesn't grow great grapes, but I know us and we want to grow, right?
Yep.
So our vineyards right now, if you look at them, and this in 2020, because of everything that's been going on, that's maybe slightly abnormal, we're going to make all of our wines 100% from our own vineyards in 2020. I just don't want to spend money buying grapes from other people. I just want to focus on the home, the family, the here and now, like what we do best. And, this whole idea is a huge long-term plan to plant grapes 5, 6, 7, 8 years now and planning into the future and craft these wines. We have all the components. We have Syrah, we have Petite Syrah, we have Malvasia to build this wine. We have the same grapes for El Serrano, Vino del Barrio, where we just unfortunately had a fall frost here this year. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but we planted Marcellan and Montepulciano, and guess what? 90% of them are dead. And what happened was we had a day in the fall last year where it went from the high 80s to the 20s overnight, and all of our young vines that we pulled up Petite Syrah and Syrah, and we planted Montepulciano and Marcellan, and unfortunately, the dealer was doing this, and we got dealt a bad hand. Interestingly, a lot of people around the state had the same thing happen. Well, so now we look at it, we reassess. I just ordered Claret Blanche, which is another white Rhone variety that we need for Vino del Barrio Blanca. It actually kind of worked out great because we're like, we've been struggling. We have too many aromatic whites. We want something more straightforward and citrusy. Claret Blanche. We also ordered Graciano. Graciano is hard to grow in more rot-prone environments, so we're going to plant the Graciano over at Dos Padres. You guys probably don't even know this yet. And we're going to take the Alianico over there and plant it down here. So, you're constantly adapting as a farmer. And meanwhile, you're thinking about, how do I make these wines throughout time? And there you have it.
That's a cool kind of guide into 2020 vintage for what's coming here. And
2020 is going to be all estate across the boards. Every wine's going to come from our vineyards. That's it.
That's
going to be
cool
badass
to hear. And vintage plays such a huge role. So hopefully maybe 5 years down the road when you're drinking a 2020 and you think about this discussion
right,
here.
It's a little memory. Yeah.
It's you can fall in love with a region when it comes to wine, but then you hear people who really know about that region say, oh, well, you were drinking an 08 compared to a 2002 and so on. And it does play a huge role. So we've had some really, really strong vintages in the last couple of years. And 2020 looks like it has a little bit of a curveball when it comes, directly towards us. But when is that not really the case when it comes to farming in the desert and doing what we're doing here? So quick question from Doug. How did Teraldigo do at House Mountain? Is it still kicking?
I would actually, as we wind up here, Teraldigo is an absolute pleasure to grow. Number one, for some strange reason, maybe because it's wicked tannic, birds don't hit it. So we net every block in every vineyard that we manage, because the birds would wipe out the grapes otherwise. Teraldigo always comes out first, even before Pinot Noir, and ripens first. But for some reason, the birds don't touch it. I don't know why. We still net it anyway. So I would say, number one, as a grape grower, it's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I was just growing this and we wouldn't have to net.
Yep.
And it grows differently than other grapes. It's kind of wispy. You helped us pick it last year, didn't you?
Yeah.
It grows kind of wispy. The grapes are elongated and really loose. So in a climate where we have monsoons, it's not rot prone. So I would say that the grapes are an absolute pleasure to grow in Arizona. I'm surprised more people aren't growing it. I don't know if anybody else is, but I would highly recommend it to everybody.
So without going too deep into it, I feel like when I eat, a Barbera grape over here versus Grenache over here, and then I go to House Mountain Vineyard and I taste the Teraldigo, I feel like the skins are significantly thicker and conditioned for an environment like this. And I feel like maybe that is, the bird comment is that, would you think that the tannin or the color associated with the skin?
I don't know. You would think the color would attract birds. On the flip side of the coin, I read some genetic research on it, and Teraldigo, I believe, I could be wrong, is one of these grapes where we don't have any parentage for. So it means that it's a very, it doesn't relate to any of the other grapes we grow. So it's a very old grape, and it has a long parentage. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Both you and I are bird nerds. We're super into the birds. I don't know if you guys can hear the calls that are happening behind us.
Black-headed grosbeaks, western tanagers.
The hooded orioles are showing back up, and they're building nests all around here. Both me and this guy I get pretty nerdy when it comes to the birds around here, and they're pretty special. But without digging into that, so the Familias here, the 2018 Familia Blanca, the 2018 Vino della Familia, are staple productions of ours. And what is kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time is that these wines are not super large productions. No wine that we're making here at Page Springs is a large production wine that would allow it to be on shelves everywhere for you guys to enjoy. The Familia sometimes makes it on the shelves out there. Our distributor does a great job of getting it out there, but we don't give them very much of it. The Familia Blanca wine, 2018 Familia Blanca, sometimes, occasionally you can find it out there, but really our wines aren't distributed outside of the state of Arizona. So the best bet on these vintages, which are both available now, is making it onto our property, which will be fully open on Monday.
Yep.
With
not
adjustments.
fully
is not the right word there. Halfly open. Yeah,
it's a Hobbit kind of open.
You're leaning out. As Eric consumes more glasses, he disappears off the back there.
These seats are comfortable.
You maybe want to, before we depart here, maybe tell guests about how they could potentially get wines for future sessions of connecting with us online.
You guys,
points.
As we kind of wrap it up here, number one, we've been sending our own kind of cars and trucks down to the Phoenix area. So that, unfortunately, if you're outside of Arizona, if you don't already have the wines, it's going to be tough to pull that off because all shipments to anywhere go through Phoenix and it's too hot now. If you're in Arizona, every Thursday, and our cutoff is noon on Wednesday, we're driving wines throughout the state. So if you want to join us, we have some really cool tastings coming up. We have the La Serrana, El Serrano kind of brother-sister tasting the next Saturday, a week from now. After that, we have rosé all day. So, if you guys are interested, by all means, feel free to call us. We'll bring them to one of 5 drop points around the valley in the evening next Thursday and the Thursday after that. So we hope you can join us. We've been really busting our asses to improve this thing technically so that the video's better, so the sound's better. And again, Ken Colburn, we love you, man. Thank you so much. Anita, if you're watching, thank you. Pass that on to Ken. It just gets back to what we're trying to do. We just want to share what we do with you guys. And in this strange time, it's great to have this medium to pull it off. So thank you so much.
So before we check out here, I'd love to just kind of file back quickly through any questions that we missed, just to make sure that you guys who are joining us here get your fill, just like we are.
The other side of the camera
here. Oh man. Little D Danielle is asking about haircuts, man. She's referencing our hair. And have you done a at home haircut in this COVID?
Actually, I had, for the first time in my life, I had a stylist cut my hair the other day. Rogue. I can't tell her. I can't say her name, and I had to be like, that's way too cool for me. Can you go back in and chop some of this shit off? I'm a farmer. Come on.
Clearly.
This is not going to help out at farmers.com.
I would say that I actually attempted my second self-applied haircut yesterday morning. COVID times, man. Certain things are essential and others aren't. What other questions? We got somebody asking before we depart here about, we are in an Airstream on our home vineyard estate property here, and they're asking about whether this is available for rental. Man, we want it to be, right? We've tried.
So reach out to Yavapai County. We actually thought about putting a couple Airstreams on property for rental, and it was viewed as something that was not savory for this community. So
it was also on paper, though. It was listed as a travel trailer, which, man, if we did this from my personal travel trailer, there would be no overhead lighting or anything like this.
Don't get me going. So, no, you guys, I'm sorry, but if you want to, no, never mind. Let's end it at that. No, unfortunately, no.
On that note, maybe one last cheers for these
Yes.
guys. Happy to drink wine with you and connect.
Same, man.
Happy to
You
have
guys,
you guys
thank you so
virtually
much.
here. Again, we are opening on Monday, so
Yeah.
we will, in the future, hopefully connect with you guys on here, but we'd love to see you in person as well.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
we're making those adjustments and are excited to get back into what we know best, really. So,
Cheers.
final cheers and thank you guys. And thanks to our wine club. Thanks to all you wine club members out there supporting us. It's a big part of us, who we are, our identity, and where we're going with this place. So, any closing statements before we move out?
Let's see. Fear is pain leaving the body. Thanks, you guys. Enjoy.
Happy to have you guys with us. Have a great evening.